Welcome to the software training video for the Corvallis Cold Weather Shelter Admissions Program. My name is Brad Smith and I will be talking you through the use of the software. The program was originally developed by Corvallis Housing First and has been used for the past 3 years in the men's shelter and for the past 2 years by the women's shelter. For the 2017-2018 season, the men's shelter will be run by the Unitarian Fellowship, but will continue to use the CHF software package. The admissions program uses 3 separate databases, one for the men's shelter, a second database for the women's shelter, and a third training database. We're going to be demonstrating in this video how to use the training database. The screen layout and functionality is the same for all 3 databases. The difference is that the men's and women's database contains real information, whereas the test database can be used and thought of as a giant sandbox in which people can learn to use the system without worrying about damaging or corrupting the data. Unless you do something really extraordinary, it's pretty hard to break the system. Multiple people are using the database, the test database, so the names and details when you actually look at the program will be somewhat different than what you're seeing on the screen here. So a couple of final thoughts before we start. If you're the type that likes to see the entire package before you start, you may want to watch the entire video before you start learning to actually use the program. My only caution is that the entire video is fairly long. A second approach, and the one I would suggest, is that you watch the video in segments. After I've talked about one topic, stop the video, sign into the system, and try out that part of the program. So let's get started. This will be the first screen you see after you sign in. The SHELTERWARE program is used for a variety of different functions. The only one that's going to be active in the test database is going to be the one in the top left corner, the shelter check-in. So when you see this screen, click on the shelter check-in. This is the status page and is the most important page in the system. It gives you a quick overview of everything that's going on in the shelter. So let me walk you through piece by piece what the pieces are that form the status page. The areas down here, each of these little blocks represents a bed. In the case of the men's shelter, we have 40 beds. In the case of the women's shelter, we have 15. Each of those beds has a status, and they can be one of 3 colors. If they are green, they're vacant and can be assigned to an individual coming into the shelter. If they are yellow, it means that an individual was in that bed last night and the bedding has not been changed since last night. So if Charlie was in bed 17 last night, comes in tonight, he'll get reassigned to bed 17. The red beds are occupied beds, and so these are the beds that we've assigned somebody to and cannot be taken by other people. The advantage of this system is that it allows multiple people to be checking individuals into the shelter, and you don't run into the problem of 2 people being assigned to the same bed. If you take a look down here on the bottom, we have a section that's called the overflow. And the way we use this is on occasions we'll have more individuals than we will have beds. So though terribly inclement weather, you have 43 individuals in the shelter. The excess people will be on cots or on the floor, and they'll be assigned to the beds in the 41 to 50 range. Most of the time, we use the numbers as a temporary holding place. So, for example, we have somebody who comes in and we need to check on a bed or to make sure that little things have been done, and we don't quite know where we want to put the person for the night. So we'll initially put them in one of the 40 beds. And so it's sort of a holding area, an overflow area, and it allows us some flexibility on bed assignments. As the individuals get assigned, the colors also change. So in this case, the individual who is in bed 4, if they come back for tonight and we admit them, the status of this bed will change from yellow to red. Likewise, if we assign somebody new to bed 10, it'll go from green to red. What you're looking at here is the lower half of the status page and provides in a tabular form much of the same information that's on the upper part of the page. So these are the individuals that are checked in for tonight. So for tonight's date, Santa Claus is sitting in bed 14. He's age 34, and we don't have any missing information on him. I'll talk about this later. These sections over here for deletions and changes we'll talk about in a moment. Leonard Nimoy has had an astonishing reincarnation and is in bed 27 tonight and has aged nicely and is currently age 40. And so it goes. Last night, we have the individuals who are in beds down here. And this helps us with keeping track of what's going on. So John Doe was in bed 4 last night. He has not checked in up here because you'll notice that John Doe is not in the list of clients, but he was in bed last night, and so bed 4 has been reserved for him. Likewise, Harry Potter was in bed 17 last night, which was not under the stairs, and has not checked in for the night. What I'd like to talk about is the toolbar in the upper left part of your screen. A couple things to note. The status page will always get you back to the page we've been looking at here. These next 3 sections, Express Check-in, Check-in, and New Client, are all interrelated, and you have the ability to go back and forth between these sections. So what I mean by this, the Express Check-in, we use that when we have multiple individuals that have been in the previous night and we're just quickly checking them back in. So the individuals in 4, 17, 22, and 20 were in last night. We've checked them in quickly, and we can do a rapid check-in. The check-in and the new client are very closely related. The check-in is going to be for individuals that have come back either from previous years or in the last month or so. And as the new client information suggests, that's for a brand new client that's in for the first time. The client list is a little bit different. It's all of the clients that have been into the clinic or into the shelter in the past 3 years and has a much more detailed history and background associated with it. The staff tools and the supervisor tools are somewhat limited in this section, but there are a couple pieces that we'll talk about and go into. The reports, there's one piece in here that you'll need to know about. So you're ready to admit a new client. Go up to your top toolbar and go to Check-in. This is the screen that will pop up, and there's a couple things you need to be aware of. The first is that we actually have 3 different ways of looking at clients. As the name New Client suggests, this is the button that you would click if you were absolutely sure that a client was brand new for the first time. If you have a client that has been in the last 30 days and you go, yeah, okay, pretty sure this guy's been in, you check there first. Whereas if you have a client that might have been in at some time in the past but you're not sure, you go into the Find Client. Okay, so why is this important? When you go into Find Client, let's see what happens. In this particular screen, we pop up 15 or 20 individuals who have been clients at one time or another. In the real database, there's almost 600 individuals in the client database, so it takes a while to download them, and it's where you would go if you had somebody that who said, yeah, I was in 2 years ago. You would find them there. In contrast, if you have somebody who has been in recently, you would go, let's take a look at the people that have been in the last 30 days. It's a much smaller list. It's faster. It's easier to use. Or if you have somebody you know is a new client for sure, then we'll go over here. Let me start by giving you a quick overview of how the new client page works. We have a series of basically blocks of information. This is the basic information block, and we'll talk about it in some detail. A couple things I'd like you to notice. First is that we have 3 items here that are in red: first name, last name, and date of birth. This is the minimum required information that we need for letting any client in. So if you have somebody who comes in and either refuses to give you information or is inebriated, the minimum that we have to have is a first name, last name, and a date of birth. And for the most part, you can usually get that out of an individual. The second section down here on race and ethnic information goes together as a block, and this is primarily for reporting purposes to the Community Development Block Grant and from them up to HUD. Military service is asked, and we'll talk about that, for purposes of determining whether somebody might be eligible for veterans benefits. The benefits section gives us a snapshot on what social programs the individual does have access to and which ones we might be able to provide some additional services for them. The Who 5 I'll get into later. It's sort of a unique set of questions that has actually provided some pretty interesting insights. Timelines is quite important, and this gives us information about what the mobility of the client has been. When did they come into town? Where have they been? How did they find out about it? This section, the TB status and the emergency contact, is all medically related, and we'll talk about that. This other information is sort of your scratch pad where you go, this is additional information I found out about the client. It's worth noting and recording, but I don't know where to put it. That goes in here. And finally, at the end, I'll talk about the pictures, which we take individual photos of the clients as they come in so that we have a chance to learn their names. So let's start talking about this first section of basic information. And the way I'd like to demonstrate this is to actually go through and admit a new client. So we have, how about Charlie? Charlie doesn't have a middle name. Oh, something original. How about Miller? And his street name is Spud. If you can capture a middle name, sometimes quite useful. His date of birth was June 6th, and let's see, he was born in 1988. Interestingly enough, this information is always surprisingly accurate. No matter how difficult a client might be, they almost always are accurate on date of birth and name. If you have somebody that's got an unusual spelling, I would ask you to make sure that you get the spelling correctly. We use it for a variety of purposes, and the more difficult names, it's pretty important that we are spelling them correctly. The guy sitting in front of me right now is obviously not deceased, but we have a box here that can be checked or unchecked. The reason we record this is that we have a surprising number of clients that die during the course of the year, and it allows us to start making some estimates of mortality of this population, which is surprisingly and rather distressingly high. Charlie is obviously still alive, so I'll uncheck that. If we knew his date of birth, we would check it here. The cell phone numbers are worth asking. About a third to a half of the guys and women, I don't know about the women, but on the guys at least, about a third to a half of them will have cell phone numbers. You can ask them if they'd like to share that with you. If they don't want to, no problem. State of birth is important to track if at all possible. It gives us some sense of how rapidly people move in and out of the state. So, well, I'm pretty sure Charlie was born in Alaska, and his household size is just 1. So at that point in time, we'll move on to the next section. So the next section we're going to talk about is race and ethnic information. This is primarily of importance for grant purposes and for the feds. And so these are the specific racial and ethnic groups that are defined by the Department of HUD, and we have to ask these questions of each individual as they come in. Most of them are pretty good and fairly accurate on reporting their ethnicity. Some of them you have to just use some common sense, but if somebody says that they are, well, in this case, let's go back to Charlie. He is Asian, he is African American, and he is white. And this is how he self-reports. And if he self-reports, then it should be recorded that way. In terms of ethnicity, if he indicates that he is white, then underneath white you have to ask the question of unanswered, Hispanic or Latino, or non-Hispanic or Latino. And in Charlie's case, he is going to self-report as being non-Hispanic or Latino. The next section of questions deal with military service and benefits. In terms of the military service, the question that should be asked is, have you served in the military? Not, are you a veteran? For a lot of these guys, they may have less than honorable discharges, and so they will not view themselves as veterans. By asking the question of, have you served in the military, you tend to get a better and more complete response. The other reason for asking this question is that it helps flag some of the individuals who may be eligible for VA benefits who have not gone through the process of requesting the benefits. So the choices of, have you served in the military, yes, no, or unsure. In Charlie's case, we're going to say yes, and a secondary set of questions will pop up. These actually don't have a huge amount of value from the perspective of specifically getting the individual benefits, but it does tend to open up a conversation. And in a lot of cases, if you ask the question, they will then start the discussion. So military service, I think Charlie might have been in the Navy, and his date of discharge was June of 2004. Now, on the benefits, these are important, also required by the granting agencies. First one is SSI, Supplemental Security Income. And your choices on all of these are unanswered, yes, no, and unsure. If you have an individual that says, yes, I have SSI, well, I'm not actually sure I do, put these down as unsure. There was a response, so it's not an unanswered response, but it's an unsure response. Are you on SSDI? Yep, I've got that. Oregon Health Plan. This one, the OHP, is an interesting one because you'll get a fair number of individuals who will report that, oh, yes, I'm on OHP. Well, actually, I'm not sure I am. Well, I was on OHP. Well, I might be on OHP. So you're going to have to make a judgment call as to how you classify these individuals. This is all into the area of what I call sort of fuzzy data. It's better than no data in terms of the benefits package, but in some cases it is going to be fairly hazy. So in Charlie's case, he is absolutely sure he's on food stamps. Food stamps through the veterans, no, he does not have those. TANF does not apply on the male side. It does apply, it usually does not apply. Does not apply, or does apply on the women's side. So we're going to say no. And this last question is pretty important because it has a direct impact on how the funding allocations go. And so these are different percentages of the mean local income. And these numbers may change slightly this year. But with very, very few exceptions, all of the individuals will fall into this lowest range, less than $16,000 a year or $1,300.41 a month. A few of the individuals will decline to give you an answer. Most of them will readily go, yeah, I have some SSI and I have a little bit of money. I make about $1,000 a month. And so record the information as you get it. The WHO 5 we'll talk about later. The timeline gives us an indication of how soon or how recently an individual has been in town and is fairly self-explanatory. Date of arrival in town. Well, okay, in Charlie's case, he got here in April of 2012. This gives us some sense of, are the individuals passing through or are they a long-term resident? When did you most recently become homeless? This starts helping us with the duration of homelessness and has some impact on how we look at the clients and what the services are that might be appropriate. So in Charlie's case, he's been homeless since April of 2015. And then the next question, how many separate times have you been homeless in the past 2 years? This gives us an indication of, is this an individual that has been in and out of homelessness multiple times, or has this individual been chronically homeless for this period of time? Again, the paths that you might want to go down with these clients will vary somewhat according to the answers. So in Charlie's case, we're going to say he was full-time. The fourth question in this block is, during the past 12 months, what city have you lived in for the longest period of time? And we have a series of choices here. Again, the reason and background for this question is it gives us a sense of, are we looking at a local population, or are we looking at a transient combination or population, or as the reality works out, it's actually a combination of both. We have some individuals who have been in the community for years, in some cases decades. Others are passing through very short periods of time. And then we have another block that are here for varying lengths of time, anywhere from a couple of weeks to a few months, and then have moved on. So in Charlie's case, we're going to make him a long-term Corvallis resident. Now, this next section on TB testing is one of the most difficult sections of the admissions process, and it's going to take some time for you to get this figured out. The background to this story is that we TB test everybody who comes into the shelter if they're going to be there for any length of time. So on the first day that they come into the shelter, the clock starts on them. And part of the discussion that you'll need to have with them as they come in is, if you are planning on staying in the shelter for more than one night this year, by 15 days out from tonight, we have to have a completed TB test card. And if we don't have that, you will not be admitted. So if you're here tonight, you're here tomorrow, you're here the third night, no problem. But the time you get out to 15 days, you're going to be not offered admission if you don't have a completed TB card. And as another part of the training, we'll talk extensively about how that whole process works. This is the section just dealing with the mechanics of TB. So today is December 8th, and let's say we actually came in on the 5th, so October 5th, 2017. And today he actually came in and presented his card. And this is a card that's issued by the Benton County Health Department. And the date when the card was presented was today, so October 8th, 2017. These two sections, TB positive and clear test results, are going to be deleted. The next section down here, and this is strictly voluntary, is that in the event of an emergency, is there someone that you'd like us to contact? About a third of the individuals will give you some information. And in Charlie's case, he would like to have his contact be Edna Miller. And Edna's phone number is 541-555-1212. This next section is sort of your miscellaneous notes section, and this is the oh by the ways that will come out as you talk to the clients. Sometimes it'll be a mention of, oh yeah, I do have some other major medical issues that you ought to be aware of. Okay. In this case, Charlie is asthmatic. Has some cardiovascular problems and is lame in his right leg. These are pieces of information that, if they are offered, they're very appropriate to be noted, but this is certainly not required. And in a fair percentage of the cases, you will not have any information here. This is also the spot that if you get some information that would be important, so the client that comes in and goes, yeah, I just got out of prison 2 days ago, and I'm really trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm talking to my parole officer tomorrow. That's useful and information that should be noted on the form. This is where you would do that. There are two additional sections that I need to walk you through before we finish up the new client page. First one is down in the lower left-hand corner. This is the Who 5 question. And what this is actually a very interesting and rather sophisticated set of questions that were developed by the World Health Organization. And what they discovered was that in a series of 5 pretty simple but very carefully worded questions, they could gather and get a gauge on the emotional health and well-being of an individual. And it's not a perfect measure, but it's actually proven to be surprisingly good and pretty interesting in terms of giving us an additional tool in assessing how these individuals are doing. So when you take a look at the question, we have, first thing you'll notice is the date that pops up. And this is automatically put in as the date in which you're editing or working on the sheet. This program is set up so that we actually can look at the same set of questions multiple times, and as it's set up now, up to 3 times. So the first question, I have felt cheerful and in good spirits. And for this and all of the other questions, the answers and choices are the same. All of the time, most of the time, more than half of the time, less than half of the time, some of the time, at no time. And the questions as they go down are of a similar nature with similar response or identical responses. And we would ask that you walk the clients through this simple test. It takes just a moment or two. And again, just try to ask the questions as evenly and consistently as possible. We will also have a card for you that you can hand to the clients so that they can read along with what the question choices or options are. The second area is over here on the pictures, and we will have a special tutorial on how to do pictures. This is a little complicated and takes some specific training and will not be included in this video. And finally, we have a section on additional questions. There's a down arrow that you click over on the right-hand side, and the questions are, again, pretty straightforward, nothing really out of the ordinary. So at the end of this whole exercise, you've come down, and after 45 minutes of video, we've talked about the program, we've admitted a new client, and now, last thing, and this is important, you got to hit the save button. Remember I said that we were all set and that the last thing you had to do was hit the save button and we would jump down to the bed assignment? Well, that was almost true. A couple of things I missed that I need to call your attention to. First, I went back and reviewed my own notes, and where it says emergency contact phone number up here, yep, that's where you put the emergency contact. Emergency contact address. It helps if you read your own notes here. And this would be where you'd put the address of Edna, that is his contact, and it is whatever information the client provides you. The medical and other information is where you would put in notes about medical conditions that were shared with you, the fact that he might have had issues with his parole officer, indications that he's looking for a job, or whatever is relevant that might help us have a little better understanding and complete picture of the client. The other 2 boxes down here, and these are important ones, you will use them very, very infrequently, but if you do, they're important. The first one is if we have a box that is clicked that says no admission, it means just what it says. This is an individual that has been tossed out of the shelter for the season or for some period of time. And if that flag is on, you will not be able to actually assign the client a bed. And so sometimes this will show up for a bunch of different reasons that I'm not going to go into now. The other one, and you'll probably never use this, is this very last one here that says flag for supervisor. Where this is important is if you have an individual that comes in and you just take a look at him and go, I don't know what's going on, but something serious is wrong with this, and I need to make sure that the shelter supervisor knows about this person. You hit that flag, so you check it, you come down here, put a check mark on that, and that flag will show up on the supervisor's iPad. And it's a cue for the supervisor to come back and have a chat with you and go, hey, you said that there was something significantly out of the ordinary with this guy that I ought to talk to you about. What's the deal? And so it's just an easy way that you can keep people moving through the lines and yet at the same time go, oh, okay, we've got a situation here that needs a further discussion. After you hit the save button, the next screen that will pop up is the assign bed screen. And this is where you actually assign Charlie to a bed. Again, remember, ones or odd numbers are lower bunks, evens are upper. And this sometimes becomes pretty important. You'll have individuals who have mobility problems and are unable to get into the upper bunk. And you'll need to work with the shelter supervisor. The individual will know which system or what works the best for that person. There's also some situations where you know for a fact that Charlie and Fred have had difficulties on the street and that you really need to put them at opposite ends of the shelter. So if it's an easy situation, the shelter supervisor may have you make the bed assignment. In most cases, you're going to go, okay, ready for a bed assignment, and the supervisor comes back and says, okay, let's put Charlie in bed 33. So you come over here to bed 33, click on bed 33, it turns red, shows that it's been occupied, and then the last thing that's important is you say check-in. One of the more common problems that you'll have when you're assigning beds is you put somebody in a bed and then realize, whoops, we got the wrong bed, the mattress isn't there, the springs aren't working, or actually more commonly, you'll look at things and go, oh, these two individuals are not going to be compatible if they're near each other. So in this example, remember we went back and we put Charlie in 33. And so we've looked down here, Charlie's 33, we see him up here on the cartoon, and you go, oh, bed 31, that's Bill Clinton. I know for a fact that Charlie and Bill don't get along. They've had problems out on the street, and that if we have these two guys that close to each other in the bunk room, we're going to have problems. And what we'd really like to do is take Charlie down here in 33, and we'd like to put him up in bed 5. It's actually very easy to do. You come down here to Charlie, make sure you got the right guy, bed 33, and we're going to change him. So we hit the change button, and then we'll come up and it says Charlie is currently assigned to bed 33. We want to put him in bed number 5. We click it. You'll notice that 33 is now green again, indicating an open bed. And we go change bed. And that's it. And as you come back down here and look at the screen, you'll now see Charlie in bed 5. And Bill Clinton is off the bottom of the screen. But you can see up here, still in bed 31. The next thing we're going to show you how to do is a group check-in. Where this becomes really helpful and useful is you've got 6 or 8 guys that have come in quick order. You've seen them the previous night. They know you know which beds they're going into. And so you just mark them off on your list. And then when you have a lull in the flow of people through the front door, you can go back and do a group check-in. So let's take a look down here on the bottom section. These were guys that were in last night. So John Doe was in, but bed 4, oh, he's already been checked in, so he's not new for the night. But Harry Potter, you've just come through the door. Voldemort is in, and Harvey Thudpecker have all walked in through the front door. So you'd like to do a group check-in to do it quickly and efficiently. So for these guys, you come up to the top of the screen, and you're going to go up to the second box in, or the second item in, the Express Check-in, and hit that. This is what your Express Check-in screen is going to look like. And these are the names of the individuals that were in last night and the status of each of these. So John Doe we talked about, he's in bed 4, and his current status is he's already checked in. But we just said that Harry Potter, Lord Voldemort, and Harvey Thudpecker have just walked in the door and been passed off to the bag checkers, and you're ready to do a group check-in. So you go, John or Harry Potter, yep, his bed's available. We'll click it. Lord Voldemort, his bed is available. And Harvey Thudpecker. We'll click those and we'll hit check in. After you hit the Save Bed button, the next thing that'll pop up is the back onto the status page. And as you can see, we've got additional individuals that are now assigned beds. And if you come down and take a look at it, let's see. Harry Potter was in bed 17 last night. And where's Harry? Harry's up here in bed 17. Lord Voldemort is over here in 20. 20, where's that? Okay, so Voldemort's here. And Harvey Thudpecker is in bed 22. So what's happened is that it allows you to take multiple individuals and quickly get them checked in. When we are looking to check a client in, I indicated earlier that there's at least 3 different ways we can do it. And as you're looking at the screen here, you have the group that is the recent clients, which we said were those within the last 30 days. Find a client, which has been anybody that's been at any time, and a new client. And we went through the new client, which was pretty straightforward. These two have a couple of little subtleties that I need to share with you. With the recent clients, if they've been in within the past 30 days, their TB status was started, or the clock was started, and this is pretty straightforward. This one only works, and this is a really big caveat, if the TB clock has been started. Now, where you get in problems with this is if you have a client that you've gone, yeah, we saw him last year, or this is the first time in for the season. This is not going to work because the flag is going to come up that says the TB status has flagged and they can't come in. So, and this is the biggie that you got to take home with you. When you have a client who has been in prior years and it's the first time in for the season, you have to go up to the client list and check that. And I'll walk you through how you do that, what you do, and why. So this will be the next screen that you see pop up, and this is the client list. And the individual that's sitting in front of you, for this purpose, let's say it is Henry Hogan. And we know a little bit about him, his date of birth, his age, and some information. But this is the first time he's checked in for the year. So the next step is we're going to have to click on this client, and up will pop the client information page. And this is what we have and what we know about him from previous years. So we know that Henry Hogan, some ethnic information here, military service here, timelines here. We're going to quickly have to go through and check all of these, and I'll show you in the next screen how we do that. So we're looking at the basic client information for Henry here. And this is the summary of all of the information you saw on the early data entry sheet. So we've got his name, rank, serial number, ethnicity, military service, the benefits, etc. Now, what you have to do the first time he comes in is you bring up this sheet and you hit edit information down here. And what that will do is actually open up the dialog boxes for all of these. And so go, Henry, yep, Hogan, yep, date of birth, and he'll say April 1, 1990, good. State of birth, Iowa. Come on down through here. Ethnicity, he said, oh yeah, I'm white and Asian. Okay, you didn't know about the Asian before, so you modified that. Ethnicity hasn't changed. You walk through all the questions. You'll tend to get a fair number of changes here in the benefits package. That's pretty important information because it allows us to see if these guys are making progress. So when you get down to the question here on OHP, he says, oh, yep, I've got it. So you go, okay, he's no longer unsure about the status. That's a yes. And okay, how about food stamps? The answer is yes, he's got those now. So we've had a definitive change in what's going on. Now, where this becomes important, and this is the main event over here, is that we have to let him know what the date is and that we've started the TB clock. So today is October 9th of 2017. So when he came in tonight, we said October. We've changed it to 9, and we've changed it to 2017. So his card hasn't been presented, but we have started the clock, and that's the important piece here. We can add other information here. No admission was flagged because he was outdated. This has to be taken off. So the biggies here. As the individual comes in, you walk back through the basic information and confirm that the things that haven't changed are indeed unchanged. Check that you were accurate on before. If the benefits have changed, the timelines, all of these. The important ones is you have to set the TB test to the day in which you were informing him. And if the no admissions flag is on, you have to take that off. When you're done, you come on down, you hit save, and you're completed and finished with this part of the exercise. This will be the screen that you'll pop back to. And here again on Henry, we've got updated information. He's a veteran, yes. These are the benefits. SSI, yes. SSDI, no. He's got these. Came from Eastern Oregon. And his TB status over here, where it says 14, that means he has 14 days from today. So day is day 1. He has 14 more days in which to get the TB status taken care of. And this number will count down day by day. So if you take a look down here, Lord Voldemort, he's only got 12 days left to get his TB card finished. And Sedgwick Diggory has 9 days. These guys all have passed TB tests, so they're good to go. The next area I'd like to talk about is one of the specialty features. Up under staff notes, there are 2 groups, staff notes and then the photo wall. And I'll talk about the photo wall in just a minute. Under the staff notes, think of this as the giant notebook that sits on the front desk and that everybody's jotting down all of the little observations and concerns as they come up, but that it's done in an electronic form and it allows us to keep track of things. It helps us that we need to order up some more toilet paper, that the laundry needs to be done, and that we've got problems with Charlie in bed 47. So let me show you how this is used. We're going to create a new note here. We click on this, and what pops up, first thing, is going to be the current date, and this will be the date and time, and entered by, I'll enter it here in a moment, or if you're new on the system, over here on the right, you can add yourself as a new staff note. So we're going to come down here, I'm going to come down to Brad Smith, and if it's something complex where there's more than one person, you can put a second person in here. Now, where this becomes important is that if you're talking about ordering new rolls of toilet paper, it doesn't matter. It's not involving a specific person. But if we've had a dust-up or a problem or something like that, we can assign it to a person. So, okay, Santa Claus. We've had an incident with Santa Claus tonight. And so he says refuses to allow his reindeer inside, says they're therapy animals, or whatever comes up. And we'll hit save, and that note will be saved. And so you can see up here the most recent note, the date, who it was entered by, the party involved, Santa Claus, and refuses to not allow his reindeer inside. Now you'll notice that this is sort of a sequential series. Some have individuals involve parties, others don't. So we had a note from last year, everything went real well this morning, but everybody was awake at 6:10. Okay, whatever. So this is sort of a continuous notebook type set of observations. I'll show you how we use it in just a moment when we want to look at the activities and behaviors of a single individual. So hopefully by now everybody recognizes that we're back on the status page here, and we're looking at the overflow beds here and down onto the bed records. And we're going, we're having some ongoing problems with Santa Claus, and he's in bed 14, and he's just been really out of sorts. And have we had problems with him before? So you just click on Santa Claus here, and what pops up, this is the lower part of the client information page, is all of the background information about him, the bed records. So in this case, it looks like Santa was in on the 5th and then again on the 8th. But then more importantly, you can come over here and read all the staff notes. So going back to last year, came in intoxicated, mumbling about elves. This year we had one note on the 8th, had a couple of notes on the 9th. And so what it does is it allows you to get a quick snapshot of what's going on with the individuals, and if there's been ongoing problems, to start looking for patterns. Sometimes you'll get some indications of, oh, if you just simply move this individual, the problems will go away, or, oh, this problem has been ongoing for quite a while, and I need to kick this problem up to the shelter supervisor because we're going to need to do something different. The second item under the staff tools is the photo wall. And when you click down on it, it will bring up photos of individuals that have already checked in for tonight and photos of the individuals that were in last night. Obviously, Santa Claus was here last night and has already checked in for tonight, whereas in the case of Cedric Diggory down here, he was checked in last night but is not checked in today. Charlie Miller obviously has been checked in both nights. What this tool does is that it allows us to start associating names and faces, and it makes it a much more personal and interactive experience. A lot of the guys are pretty amazed when somebody actually knows them by their first and last name and addresses them as such. And so this is one of the tools that we have set up, and if you don't have somebody checking in or you have a spare screen, it's a very useful one to have the photo wall up and available, and it just helps you get to know the individuals. There's only one choice under the reports section, specifically the print nightly bed report. What this is an output, a tabular form of the individuals that were in last night. So if you take a look at this diagram, Mickey Mouse was in bed 1, John Doe in 4, Leonard Nimoy was in 27, Bill Clinton in 31. It tells you what bed they were in, the night before last, if they were in that bed. So when you take a look at this example, Harry Potter was in bed 17 last night, the bed number here, and he was in bed 17 the night before that. I'll tell you in just a moment why that's important. And then the TB card status. So his TB card has been checked and he's okay. Take a look at Voldemort. He was in last night. He was in the night before. He's got 12 days to go. This guy, Scott Morgan, was not here last night, but he was here the night before. And Cedric Diggory was here last night, but not the night before, and has 9 days left on his card, on his TB test. The reason this column and the yesterday column become important, the yesterday is pretty self-evident. These are the guys that are going to be appearing as the yellow dots on the status page. Sometimes when we have an individual that we know is not going to be in the following night, so they may say as they're checking out in the morning, I'm not going to be here tomorrow night, and the shelter's not real full, we might choose to leave the linens unchanged. So for example, this guy, Scott Morgan, was not here last night, but was here the night before. And if we don't have demands for that bed, we'll probably leave it just the way it was. If he comes back tonight, he already has a bed. It saves us some laundry. If, however, we're getting towards capacity and we need the bed, then the bedding gets stripped, gets washed, new bedding issued, and he doesn't have a bed for the night. So it's just a quick and easy way that we can use this both to keep track of who was in last night, what bed they were in, and if they were here the night before, it helps us on making decisions on changing out bedding. The other thing that this is really useful for is you print the sheet out, you put it at the check-in desk, and as Mickey Mouse comes in for tonight, you just take a yellow marker and line him out. And so even if you don't have time to enter him into the system, you know he's there. Okay, Harry Potter came in just after him, and he was followed by Santa Claus. So you have the three individuals. They're all lined out in yellow. They're easily identified. And when you have a break, then you go back to the quick entry system, and you take multiple people, enter them at once, and off you go. Well, hopefully that will give everyone enough information to get started on using SHELTERWARE. This is the first time I've put together one of these videos, and there are obviously some problems that have already been identified. So one of the questions and challenges is, as you go through and use this video, if you find things that you go, this doesn't make sense, or this screen is inconsistent, please jot a note down and send it to me, and in subsequent revisions I'll try to take care of this. This is hopefully going to get us through the season, and we'll figure out a more sophisticated version for later. But at least for the short term, that's what you got, and have fun. And for those of you that don't recognize it, this is the Corvallis Housing First facility at the Van Buren Street. It's a recent acquisition, and we're very pleased with how it's working out.